Thank you very much for waiting. Let's move on to the next session on the theme of why DEI in the ecosystem is needed now, global perspectives and case studies. This session is powered by Startup Ecosystem Association. The panelists are Mr. Gen Tsuchikawa, former chairman of Sony Ventures Corporation. Ms. Agata Nowicka, managing partner of the Female Foundry. The session is moderated by Ms. Mari Kogiso, co-CEO of SDG Impact Japan.
So hi everyone. Thanks for coming to the session. I'm Mari Kogiso, CEO of SDG Impact Japan, and I will be moderating this session today. So we're going to talk about DEI and ecosystem today, which is a very hot topic in Japan right now. And I'm going to just introduce two wonderful speakers very quickly, and I'm going to ask them, each of them, to introduce them more in detail. So the first speaker we have is Agata Nowicka. So Agata is the founder of Female Foundry, one of the largest network of VC investors and female entrepreneurship in Europe. And she's also the author of Female Innovation Index. She also has a deep understanding of startups and AI. So I think we can learn a lot from Agata about the startup ecosystem and the DEI in Europe, as well as AI and DEI. And the other speaker is Gen Tsuchikawa. Gen is the founder of Sony Ventures and was the chairman until last year. So prior to that, he spent 20 years as Sony's global head of investor relations, M&A, and business development. He is also a member of board of directors of Japan Venture Capital Association, where he has been promoting DEI. We are delighted to have Gen-san on this panel as well. So without further ado, maybe may I ask Gen-san first, you are closer, to introduce yourself and let also talk how you've been involved in the DEI.
Hi, everyone. I'm Gen Tsuchikawa, and Mari, thanks for the introduction. I started Sony Ventures back in 2016, grew it to a team of around 30 people, US, Europe, Israel, India members, and Japan. Made over 100 investments, fund size 500 million US strong. And I found a great successor and moved on to leave the Sony Ventures as of last year. And currently working on helping a lot of startups continuously in this ecosystem and acting as advisors and the board members for many startups as well. And so there's been a lot of discussion around DEI in the startup ecosystem in Japan for the last few years. I've been a pretty active member in that discussion and shared a lot of experiences at Sony and also how I increased the diversity ratio in my team as well. Also, my wife, actually, who's sitting right there, has joined the venture capitalist community, and she's the country manager for Hearst Labs, which is one of the Hearst funds which only invests in female entrepreneurs. She's new to the industry, so I'm helping her on her effort as well. So that's me.
Great, thank you, Gen-san. And Agata, can I ask you to introduce?
Yes, hello everybody, and thank you, Mari, for the introduction, and thank you for the invitation to be today at the conference. So today I'm the managing partner of Visionaries AI Accelerator, focused on acceleration of startups, female-founded startups that are leveraging AI, but also that operate in the deep tech or science, let's say. So that's my focus right now, but over the past 13 years, I've been very much involved in the venture ecosystem in Europe. First as a founder, so I've actually built 2 companies. My first company, it was a data and analytics business in 2011. So you can imagine the ecosystem looked very, very different at that time. And my second business that I built in Hong Kong was a fintech business. It's still running. It's a capital markets business. And when I've moved to the venture capital side, at some point I realized that I wanted to be part of other startup stories. So I've actually joined and I've been a VC investor to venture capital funds in London. I actually realized that firstly that there were not many VCs with founder experience, but to my even bigger surprise, I realized that there were not many women in the ecosystem, and I'm talking about both sides as a VC investor and as a founder. And having that unique perspective and unique background, I realized I had the sense of responsibility to bring that perspective and experience and help other female entrepreneurs in Europe to succeed. And since then, I've basically started Female Foundry about 3.5 years ago. This was the first initiative of this kind at that time in Europe. So, Jensen, when you say that exactly the topic hasn't been around in Japan, it definitely hasn't been around for a long time in Europe either. So. And since then, we've become a network of over 7,000 VCs and female entrepreneurs in Europe. I'm also the founder of the biggest report on female innovation and funding in Europe, partnering with 20 European countries.
Great, thank you so much. Do you have any plan to establish female foundry in Japan in the near future?
I'm actually being very much inspired. So yes, maybe.
Okay, thank you. And I guess I understand that you have just publicized a new report, and can you explain about that?
Thank you. So I think that I will need to.
Yeah, we need a slide.
I need to see the slide deck. Hopefully, it's going to work. Let's see. Yes. So yes, I thought that I would share findings because we are in Japan, and I think that it's good to have some perspective to the other parts of the world. And Female Innovation Index, as I described, is the biggest initiative to map the level of funding and innovation in Europe. And I launched it about 2.5 years ago. And believe me, the journey to launch this report wasn't really easy. Even big corporations, obviously I needed funding, and I also needed that kind of support from across the ecosystem. I think that the need for that for me was definitely there, because without the data we cannot drive impact. But at the same time, it took me about a year to bring those parties together, because it was the first one. So these are some of the partners today we work with. So you can see, basically we partner with over 35 private equity and venture capital associations across Europe, across 20 European countries. Why 20, you would ask, not more? Because 20 European countries already cover 91% of the entire venture capital activity. Now, when it comes to the analysis, we basically analyze 145,000 companies on an annual basis. We also have a survey, so we really want to get the kind of perspective of founders and investors and really understand what their priorities are and what their ambitions are and aspirations. That's very important to complement that hard data. And we also interview investors and founders. And the outcome is 100 plus insights. I'm not going to be sharing all of them today. I'm just going to share some of the key insights that you might find interesting. And before we get there, this is actually the picture of the launch event of the 2025 edition of the index that took place just over 2 months ago in London. And what was very exciting The launch was joined by VC investors, some of the most prolific angel investors, but was also joined by over 300 female entrepreneurs based mainly in Europe, who collectively raised 1.6 billion in funding. So you can just imagine how electrifying that experience for me personally was. And including joining us was also Liz Upton, one of only 3 founders, female founders in Europe, that IPO'd in 2024. She basically founded this company called Raspberry Pi that creates microcomputers. Very inspiring founder. So when it comes to the key insights, and when it comes to funding, female entrepreneurs in Europe raised 5.76 billion of funding, and 1,196 founder teams got funded. But as you can imagine, these numbers are very, let's say, meaningless by themselves. So I will give you a little bit of perspective on that. So that number means that 12% of all venture capital funding went to female-founded companies. And you can see over years that number is on the rise. It's steady. I think that the fact that it's remained steady in 2024, I would say it's a huge achievement, because the fundraising market has been incredibly slow in Europe. So that's very positive. Also, that 5.76 billion funding, at the same time, you can see it's going down, but I want to just point out one thing. Even though that 12%, we've seen a 12% drop when it comes to capital raised by female entrepreneurs, when you compare it to the broader fundraising across all kinds of startups, basically gender-agnostic startups, which that drop basically for them was 11%, you can easily say that actually female entrepreneurs have been, there's been no difference when it comes to the amount of female-founded companies raised, or the impact over the past year. Also, what is good to point out, 15% of female-founded companies, 15% of all startups are female-founded companies. And one of the very interesting findings that we found last year was that when you look at female-founded companies, there are no differences when it comes to success rates, something that is very often talked about female founders being disadvantaged when it comes to venture capital funding. When you take into account the number of female-founded companies, actually there are no differences when it comes to success rates between female-founded and founded companies, which means that basically we just need more female-founded companies in order for those numbers, that 12%, to go higher. And maybe you might just the last few insights before we move on. I think what was also interesting, what we found interesting, health is the biggest sector. You can see 40% of the entire venture capital funding went to health, female-founded startups. Fintech is the second category. I think many people find it very surprising. And then food is the third category. And I just want to show 3 last slides, which I hope that you see them. Everything goes, basically, all the data points upwards, which is, we had currently have 24 female-founded companies in Europe. Unicorns, which is those companies with 1 billion plus valuation. And then also we've seen a higher number of M&A transactions in 2024. And also those IPOs that I mentioned earlier, there were 3. And you might point to 2021 when the number was 12, but we've never seen this. This is what's been referred today as a fundraising bubble. So those were really, I would say, outlier conditions at that time. So 3, if we get to 6 next year, we will see. That will be really great. But IPO market is obviously very slow. So currently, 3 is a great success. So if you want to learn more, just have a look at the Female Innovation Index. On purpose, I've had no writing in this index, so it's only data and interactive diagrams. So it's apparently, people say, very easy to maneuver and very engaging. So thank you for sharing. I hope that you find this data interesting.
Thank you so much. This is really interesting, and it's very encouraging to hear that female and the male founders' success rates not different. But among those all the insight, what are the most notable insight that you took away from this study?
Yeah. So as I said, definitely the insight about equal success rates. I think that data we triple checked because we found it so surprising, because it almost debunks many theories that currently exist in the ecosystem. I would say another challenge is to make this data, people being aware of this data in order to change the narrative. So that was one. The second one was about fintech. Personally, I've been a fintech founder myself, and I found myself this data quite interesting, because fintech normally is associated, even in Europe as well, it's a very male-dominated industry. And the third one, which is not captured in the slides, but actually out of 50 biggest rounds, meaning those rounds of 100 million plus in Europe last year, went to female founders with scientific backgrounds, which we also found very surprising. It's 91%. So if you're from academia, or if you have scientific or deep tech background as a female entrepreneur, you should be expecting to raising big rounds. And I think that my assumption there is that AI obviously plays a big role.
Thank you so much. I think we're going to talk more about AI. But so we call scientific background female as rikejo in Japan. But we hope that we're going to have more rikejo. It's very rare, so it has specific name, but we're going to have more rikejo in the future. So I want to turn the topic to Japan now. And スライドお願いしてもよろしいでしょうか。So as everyone know that, I think there's quite a big backlash against DEI in the United States these days. But according to the survey, in Japan, only 3% of companies responded that they're going to change their DEI activities. So it seems that, that seems like a good news, but the other opinion is Japanese companies are already quite lagging behind. So that's why that there's not so much change in the ecosystem. So if we look at the numbers in Japan, according to the 2023 survey, women account for 24.8% of new businesses founders in Japan. And actually, sorry, this is a slide number from 2021, but fortunately or unfortunately, 2023, the number has not really been changed, so I put up this slide. So, and when it's come to the, so among the startup newly listed companies that secure funding, the proportion of women among founders and CEO is only 1 to 2%. And as of 2021, the proportion of female CEOs among newly listed companies is 2%. And if I just quickly touched on to the public company status, it's very interesting data that there's more CEOs named Hiroshi than female CEOs in Japanese prime market today. So there's 13 Hiroshi and only 3 female CEOs. So this is actually a little bit sad situation, but what do you think that, why this is such a problem? Like, can I ask like both of you that why we need to change this, and also why it is really important to have diversity from the really early stage of the company, other than like, catching up later. So may I start from maybe Gain-san?
Well, thanks for the great data, and thanks for the Japan data as well. So maybe a couple of points to hit is that, so Japan's startup ecosystem is still very small compared to Europe, of course US, but it has grown to approximately 10 times over the last 7-8 years. And it is still very small compared to the GDP that Japan has. So the growth potential is actually quite high. And I think there's a pretty strong recognition that DEI needs to be treated very carefully in this discussion. There's been some major movements over the last few years. For instance, Japan Venture Capital Association set a goal to achieve a 30% diversity ratio for the board members. They set it and they achieved it within 6-8 months. So that's one. There's been a lot of volunteering activity. I think he's on another stage, but there's a guy called David Milstein at 8 Rows, and he headed that up. Also, the Startup Ecosystem Association played a major role here, but there's a good amount of volunteers who I'm also a member, talking about code of conduct, training, incident reporting, and awareness improvement, and making sure there are examples that are useful, so that when each of the organizations decide to take on those subjects, there's already a good example that they can start from. So maybe one more thing to add regarding why DEI at an early stage is important is that, so I used to work for a company called Sony, but Sony is a company where the founders of Sony, like you may know people like Ibuka-san, but this is a long time ago, but when Sony was starting, they also addressed how important diversity was. And it shows up in many of the writings he has made then. Bringing in different diverse talent into the mix and trying to make a very creative product is at the genes of Sony. And obviously, there has been so diversity is not only about female, but there's been a lot of women very actively engaged in management from the 70s. So you see that kind of company growing up to where Sony is now. I think it gives a good example of how diverse companies can really grow up.
Thank you so much. I think it's very interesting to hear that Sony has that diversity philosophy from the beginning. And Agata-san, may I ask?
Yes, maybe I will start with the second question you asked, which is why this is so important. Because, and I think that we will all agree that, first of all, founders, especially in today's era with AI, focus on really solving hard problems. And those problems are on the kind of societal level, are the most exciting for VC investors, and those that are the big problems that society faces. And when you think about it, really, it's on one hand, we focus on big organizations, but it's really our future lies in the hands of those early stage founders. Sony was once a startup, Google was once a startup. OpenAI, 5 years ago, 6 years ago, was just seven founders in one room. So especially in the context of AI, when we see those tiny companies suddenly becoming multi-billion organizations, having impact on our lives, topic of diversity and representation is even more and more important, because our society, and we can look around, has got all kinds of people in it with all kinds of needs and interests. So in order to address those needs, we need to have also founding teams and kind of investors that represent that society in order to make that sort of representative impact.
Thank you so much. I think it's thank you for raising some important point. And may I ask that also, it is recognized that diversity is very important in the startup system. In reality, it's very difficult because they don't have many people, or they are struggling to hire diverse people. So would you give some example or give some idea that how those startups can increase their diversity?
So, I mean, I think, so maybe this may not be a direct answer to your question, but so when I was building Sony Ventures up from scratch with, we only had two, three people in the beginning, what I really found was that when you have, let's say, a 5% or 10% diversity ratio, it's actually very hard for the minority person. And so let's say there's one woman and 9 guys, and it's very hard for that person to be themselves. But if you just grow the number to, let's say, 30%, then, and it's interesting to see that, so when, let's say, there's 3 women there, and, the 3 women could be very different women in terms of, what they want, and, what they aspire to be. But it just makes them be able to be themselves. And I thought that was a very important observation I had. And, it was easy to proceed along that path because I was in a Sony entity. And, all the management everybody was checking the numbers on what the diversity ratios were. But that I found to be really interesting. And the second factor was that, since we ended up being a very international team of US, Europe, and India, and Israel, when you bring in the international folks into the mix, this sort of in Japan diversity issue, in a sense, goes away. Because everybody's different, so you have to listen to what everybody is thinking, understand their values to reach any conclusion or to make any say. So I thought that actually is an extremely effective way of addressing this issue.
Thank you so much. I guess, do you have any comments on the situation in Europe?
Yes, one thing that I want to say, because I've been a founder myself twice, is that, bringing that perspective basically, is that precisely because you're a small team, you can't afford not to have a diverse team. Because only by having a diverse team, you're going to assure that you have the best ideas, that the best ideas win. So having this echo chamber, risk of an echo chamber is extremely high when you're a young company, because every week when you're not growing, when you're not developing a product, is a wasted week. And especially in today, the competition, we are talking about globalization, obviously. Venture capital is becoming global, meaning US investors invest more in European startups. European startups invest in Japanese startups, probably some of them 8 roads, for example. So we are talking about competition on the global scale. And therefore, you need to assure that whatever you're proposing to bring to the market is truly innovative also on the global scale. And that means that you need to bring people with the best ideas, one. Secondly, you need to make sure that you have complementary skill set and mindsets, but also that you have people that kind of come from different almost corners of your industry, or even completely not from your industry, to bring new, fresh kind of ideas that will create that unfair advantage as a team. So I would definitely encourage, if there are any startup founders today, to question as a founder, your own thinking and your own decision making when it comes to forming that first team. Because I think it's very easy to have your own bias and bring people in that are just like you, whereas exactly it's what the opposite. That's what will make you succeed.
Thank you so much. That's a very clear and a very strong statement. And I also want to talk about female founders. And it has been said that, the female founder have like relatively more obstacles compared to male founders, and especially they have harder time to access to resources such as network, like funding and teams. But do you have any insight, like how this can be overcome? Maybe starting from Gen-san.
So in a sense, this is exactly what the volunteer group that we talked about is actually trying to achieve. But actually, it's very important. So creating awareness, creating examples of code of conduct and training and whatnot, that's also important. Now, the next stage, then, all the other entities need to address this, but then we need to get to a stage where the leaders can start to share their best practices, and they be proud of many of the things that they are doing. And I think we're starting to see that in some aspects, but I think we just needed to continue to grow. And Japan is somewhat making a trend is actually quite important, and many people, when they think this is the must trend, that they will all get into it and sort of join the bandwagon together. So I think that's it's still going to take some time, but I think it's something that we're trying to get done, I think.
Thank you so much. Do you have any comment too?
Yes, so I would definitely agree with the fact it's going to take time. I think that many people almost expect the change to happen overnight, and that's not the point. We are trying to create a sustainable change, and that's going to take time, and it's going to take also multiple different stakeholders. So I think what's been working in Europe, I can talk for Europe, and having seen the ecosystem evolve, especially I would say COVID was an accelerator to a certain degree. Has been there have been multiple small communities, local communities popping up across Europe, kind of roughly at the same time. I can say Female Foundry was one of the first ones, but then I would say a year after had multiple different small communities, local communities popping up that had the same agenda to support female entrepreneurs. And then once we get this kind of velocity and a kind of momentum, definitely I've started to see more VC investors seeing, especially with the index, the first edition of index that exposed the actual hard data. That data definitely helped. To ask for direct introductions for that deal flow, for female-founded companies' deal flow. And the last, I would say quite expectedly, and hopefully in Japan this will be faster, the past year was really about, I've seen this engagement on the government level and kind of government level initiatives. But I would say the existence of three at the same time is as important. That's what I want to say, because when you think about it, these are complementary initiatives. I would say government will never be as close to founders as those local communities, and those local communities might not get the level of funding as can be kind of tapped from the government level. So I would say this is the first year, probably this year, like literally starting from January, where I can see the entire ecosystem working together. So we'll see how far we're going to get. I think that there is a world before and after, and I think that we are in the world after, and we'll see how fast we're going to see the change.
Great. Thank you so much. In Europe, is there any place like everyone get together, like, incubator or government or, other like entrepreneurs or venture? But that's actually the female foundry that you're doing.
Maybe female foundry, but I would say one thing when you think about Europe, the challenge that we have, that you in Japan, I would assume, don't have, which is a luxury position already, is that we talk about Europe, but we are really talking about 40-plus countries with very specific cultures and regulatory positions and hiring systems and so on. So I would say, yes, the index has been definitely a mobilizing factor, and this is why I've worked with 20 countries to be on the same page. But they mainly happen on the kind of country level. And to be fair, 50% of the entire venture capital funding, for example, goes to UK-based startups. So me being based in London definitely has a kind of, let's say, European level pull when it comes to that conversation.
Thank you so much.
This is great data, yeah, that she has. I think the data she brought to the table is great, you know, really.
Right, great. Okay, so given like Agasa's background and Gensa's background, I think we're gonna talk about AI a little bit, like after this. I think we had a very interesting conversation already in the backstage, but AI gonna be changing a lot of things in the next few years. And I want to ask, like both of you, how do you think that AI will change the kind of dynamics, especially the DEI dynamics in the startup ecosystem? Maybe it's a little bit. Okay, I'm gonna ask.
Based on the backdoor discussion, I think she should go first.
Please.
Okay, so I will start with the positive view, actually, because I'm the great believer that actually AI is a hugely democratizing tool, especially for startup founders. It's never been more, it's never been more easy to start a company. You can develop your first MVP from scratch. You can be bootstrapped. You don't need actually VC funding to start testing the market and so on. So to become a founder today, I would say whoever is in the audience and is considering becoming a founder, please do it now, because we are living in very exciting times. So that's number one. I would say my positive view definitely overtakes other challenges. And those challenges, and we've discussed them backstage, are obviously the representation and, of especially data that AI leverages. We are seeing big corporations, I can say OpenAI and others, Anthropic and so on, kind of maybe deprioritizing DEI or overall even ethics, I would say, agenda as a consequence of them prioritizing profits or revenue at this stage, and that's a challenge. Because I don't know, there is a big question mark in terms of, on one hand, we have this huge development and accelerating development of AI. We are talking about artificial general intelligence happening in 3 years' time. On the other hand, we haven't really worked up models yet or systems that can at least check how AI develops when it comes to that representation. And we know that the kind of the average data scientist today is a man, is not a woman. So I'm not sure yet, but I'm a little bit worried about the consequences and the kind of combined with the speed of the development of AI models right now.
Thank you so much. So maybe Gen-san?
Yes, so I'm a big believer that humanoids will really come, and that humanoids will, maybe in 5 years, we'll start to see quite major deployments of humanoids. So then I think we'll be looking at a new world. It's not just the diversity among people. There will be AI-based physical being right next to you. And how to deal with among the three is also a big subject. And so it's only going to get complicated, but I think the AI will not go away, I think.
The humanoid don't have gender difference, right? Or you can create...
I haven't figured that out.
No, but it's interesting actually to what you.
It's a great question, actually.
It is. And one other thing that I want to actually mention on this, because I actually heard that Anthropic's CEO is actually developing a well-being for AI, so well-being officer for AI, not for a human, not for employees, but for AI, because he believes that AI is going to reach some kind of consciousness level pretty soon. So we'll need to treat AI as a human being, and therefore, that's I think that's the level of complication that we are talking about here, in terms of discrimination. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. And can I also ask about like gender bias that of AI, like how serious that can be. Like I think it's both sides. Like because coping with the AI, we don't have to disclose we are men or women, right? So it may decrease the bias of gender bias, but at the same time, like in the data, like there's already gender bias embedded in the system, so it may work negatively. But do you have any view or comments on that point?
I would say the most important thing is that, first of all, that we are aware that bias might be present. And I really hope, and this is, by the way, also a startup idea opportunity, if you're passionate about that space and you want to really, maybe not even passionate, if you want to really play a role in terms of shaping the future, there are opportunities right now in terms of developing startups in the responsible AI space, meaning building those systems, because I don't think that those systems that I mentioned for making sure that data actually is representative, they're not necessarily going to come from those organizations such as OpenAI. Obviously, Anthropic is one of the leaders in this space for now, but we'll see how it evolves. And therefore, I think that those initiatives will need to be in some way external and leveraged internally by those companies to have that sort of neutral positions. But I'm not an expert in that, in the data structuring space, but definitely it's going to be a huge area to explore as a startup founder.
No, I really like the comment you made backstage, which was that, 3-4 years ago, we used to talk a lot about AI and ethics and the bias and whatnot. But it really seems like, with ChatGPT and Anthropic, we're sort of in execution phase, and that the checking and balance has really gone away. So it really made me think that, maybe type a few, those types of questions into the system and see what comes out. I'd like to check, actually.
Great. Thank you so much. That was a very interesting discussion. So I think we have only 2.5 minutes now. So may I ask each of you to give you some final comment on how embedding DEI into the ecosystem at this point will change the future, or if you have any advice or any comment to the audience here. I think we already got your important advice to start your own company. If you want to start your company, start now, right? But if you have any additional comments, please. May I start asking?
Okay. Somebody commented in one of the volunteer meetings the other day about the sandwich approach, which I thought was a good word, that at the macro level, we just need to continue to talk about this and really try to, understand where it is at from a macro level, but also, we need to really work on more on the micro level, that each and every execution is done fairly and in a manner that makes sense. Many people, I think, Mari, you also asked the question, but many people say, okay, I understood DEI, what should I do next? But I think, the execution is a lot more, there's a lot of detail here, so I think, that's also another thing that the volunteer groups are working on in terms of providing guidance. So I'll end with that.
The sandwich means that in the company or in the ecosystem or everywhere, or what?
Top down, but also bottom up. It just doesn't. Let's say the senior guy is talking about it, in a very frequent manner. That itself doesn't really solve the question. So
you have to be both sides. Okay, great. Thank you, Agata.
So few thoughts, kind of parting thoughts from me. So firstly, I think that I would encourage everybody, and I think that it's not even encourage. I think that we need to see DEI not as an option, but as a must. And also, we need to see DEI as an opportunity as opposed to requirements. Because there are multiple studies there that we know that this will translate to better outcomes. And I want to also second what Jen Sands just said, which is you have the power of changing the picture of innovation by implementing DEI in your own worlds, in your own life. Whatever it is, if you're a corporate player, even if you're in the middle management in the corporate player, there must be plenty of opportunities. You just need to be conscious of changing kind of how things are done and being more for the ecosystem, wherever your ecosystem is, to be more inclusive. And therefore, don't think that about this idea of DEI to be very abstract and high level and only kind of locked up behind the doors of executive level people in your organization. This is actually your responsibility, and as I said, your opportunity to change, I would say, the ecosystem and especially drive innovation, in my opinion. So I hope that you will leave today and you will kind of zoom in closer to your lives and see whether there are, or kind of what are those opportunities for you to make impact.
Thank you so much. I think we had a great discussion, and I learned a lot, and I hope that you all in the audience also learned a lot today. So please give a big hand to both like a great panelists. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Please give them a big round of applause.